Most Christmas films aren't that good. Let's be honest. Some are just, ooh, this asshole discovered the meaning of Christmas, or oh, there's this typical romance story, but it's on Christmas. Or they're just blatant fantasy stories about Santa forming an Avengers style team with other holiday figures, which I think are the best ones objectively. Yes, most Christmas films are mid. A pattern I often notice is that most down to earth Christmas stories are bad, and it's usually the more fantastical ones that are the best, especially the animated ones. But then there's Klaus. Klaus is an animated Christmas film, published by Netflix, intended to be a more grounded, realistic origin story for Santa Claus, starring a spoiled brat, voiced by James Schwartzman, who is forced to become a postman on an isolated island and forms a partnership with a woodsman named Klaus, voiced by the ever so talented J.K. Simmons. This film would slowly become a critical success and even be nominated for an Oscar. It's probably one of my favorite Christmas films, and an annual watch every year for me. I want to go over what makes this film so beautiful, from its style to its writing, because I think this is one of the best Christmas films ever made. My name is Sir Toaster from Gamers Theater, and welcome to another video. If you enjoy this type of content, then stick around to the end. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment your own thoughts, or what you watch every Christmas. I create various video essays regarding media, from movies, shows, books, and video games, often reviews or analysis, so if you're new, be sure to stick around to the end. Despite its looks, Klaus is not like the Spider-Verse trilogy or most Sony animations. The characters in Klaus are not stylized CGI to look like comic book characters, but it's a simple trick which makes the characters look three-dimensional. This film was made by SBA Studios and has a whole team of 300 people, including 40 animators behind it. This film is an origin story for Santa, which appeals to nostalgia, so the director thought the best route would be to do hand-drawn animation with extra steps. They first started with rough sketches before adding bolder lines, then they'd paint everything in with flat colors. Most animated films would end here, but the team decided to go a few extra steps further and use lighting and texturing. After learning this trick, they teamed up with French studios Les Films de Poisson Rouge. The studio helped SBA advance the technology they called the Klaus Light and Shadow, or the Klaus. This allowed for the art team to paint with light, which helped the film look straight out of a storybook. This also allowed for more thematic moments in the story, like when everyone finds out Jesper's real motives. Jesper is conflicted, and he's shown through half of him in the light, symbolizing the truth, and the shade, which symbolizes the lie he wanted to keep up. Meanwhile, his father and the clan leaders are in complete darkness due to his father believing the lies the clan leader told him. Texturing is also a major factor. Lots of older animated films often had characters look more out of place in more detailed backgrounds. However, in Klaus, as Jesper states, this is a story about letters. Letters are an iconic part of Christmas traditions. I think most of us watching have sent at least one letter to Santa in our childhoods, with the hope that we'd get presents, and some of us did get presents from our parents, because, Santa isn't real. Sorry, kids. Klaus establishes the reason why this tradition occurred. Jesper comes from a noble family whose wealth is built on the postal system. This is where Jesper gets the idea. It's leverage. He can use this. Klaus gives the toys, and Jesper gets the mails. Essentially, this iconic and wholesome tradition effectively started out because of one selfish person's own interests. Jesper only got the picture because he wanted to mail it to its owner. While he could just stamped it in and put it, he requests a penny from a clearly penniless child. He had to get something out of it when he only really needed the letter because he was entitled and self-centered. He only did Klaus's task with self-preservation in mind, as he assumed Klaus was a dangerous person who only meant harm. When word spread of what Klaus did, yet it triggers a chain reaction that causes people to get better, something that Jesper himself is bewildered by. This is because he doesn't actually care about the kids, or at least not initially. Jesper lives in a world where everyone is out to get something, as he tells Klaus.
I've been around long enough to know that everyone is out to get something.
Throughout the film, Jesper exploited people. He exploited the children and in turn exploited Ava so that the children could learn to read. The three spend countless hours trying to decipher Margot's language. Once Jesper's done the hard part, the next is the really hard part. He doesn't go to Klaus for this. Instead, he gets some tools and makes Margot a sleigh. Klaus comes in to help anyway, but that doesn't change the fact that Jesper did indeed want to make the sled. He didn't have to do this. It got him a letter, sure, but at the end of the day, he did it without any selfish motivation outside of communicating with this sweet child. Before we continue Jesper's story, I think this is a good transition to the next part of the video.
Someone used to say, a true, selfless act always sparks another.
The mythos of Santa has changed significantly over time. The mainstream Santa that we know today was from a Coca-Cola advertisement. However, the original Santa was a bishop named Saint Nicholas of Myra, born in 280 CE in modern-day Turkey. Klaus deliberately reaches back towards that older interpretation. Klaus himself shares far more in common with Saint Nicholas than with modern commercial Santa. He's not a public figure, he does not seek recognition, he gives quietly and hesitantly. It isn't until later in the film that Klaus and Jesper's operation starts resembling something similar to mainstream Santa. The sleigh with its flying reindeer was just an incident where the duo had to escape certain death, and the elves were just the Sami tribe. The inclusion of the Sami people isn't just aesthetically interesting, it's culturally thoughtful. Klaus treats indigenous representation with care, grounding it in geography and history rather than a fantasy shorthand. Smeerensburg is inspired by a 17th century Dutch whaling settlement near Norway, making the presence of a Sami tribe not only plausible but historically appropriate. Rather than turning them into caricatures, the film presents them and Klaus is its soul. At first glance, Klaus is presented as a myth before he's a man, a hulking figure in the woods, a reclusive woodsman surrounded by shadows, silence, and unfinished toys. Even Jesper's first impression of him is rooted in fear, not because Klaus does anything violent, but because isolation has hollowed him out so completely that he barely registers as human. And then we learn why Klaus is the way he is. He used to be a simple man who loved his wife and dreamed of a home filled with children. The toys weren't tools of generosity at first, they were made for children they'd have, symbols of the future that he and his wife Lydia wanted, but that future never came. And when Lydia died, that dream died with her. With the toys losing their meaning, Klaus started making birdhouses, not because they served a purpose, but because Lydia loved birds. This repetitive behavior is deeply telling. Klaus isn't building birdhouses to give them away. He's building them because repetition is comfort to the world around her. Everything that happens, all the changes, was a result of one selfless act by Klaus. And then it inspires the protagonist himself.
If I don't get those letters, then what am I supposed to do? Stay in this little town forever, hanging out with an old woodsman surrounded by crazy people, and never wanting anything more?
I was putting off talking more about Jesper for a bit because I wanted to discuss how his actions reflect on the world around him. As I stated, the children's actions, while initially motivated by the desire for toys, evolves into kindness and selflessness that motivates their parents to act on the same principle. This turns the war-torn city into a thriving community where former enemies are now hanging out like normal people, being warm and casual to each other. One detail I really like is how we meet the Crumb father that sent dogs after Jesper, and here he's just really friendly. He even refers to Jesper and Ava formerly, calling Ava Miss Ava and Jesper Postman Johannes. It's such an interesting moment. That one line says everything. Jesper isn't just tolerated anymore, he's respected, he belongs. And the film never lets you forget that. Jesper doesn't suddenly become good overnight. Even as the town improves, he's still conflicted. He feels the weight of the lie long before he's exposed. He sees the consequences of his manipulation in real time, not as abstract guilt, but as real people making real sacrifices. The way he makes the sled for Margot and then sees her playing perfectly mirrors how Klaus felt seeing the young boy playing with the wood frog he gave him. Lots of people hate the liar reveal scene because it's an overused trope, but I think it works. Jesper across the story presents himself as higher than others morally, pretending to be selfless and honorable. While his selfishness is what caused everyone to be selfless, it's understandable why Ava and Klaus wouldn't be happy to learn the real reason behind his actions. Especially Ava, who literally sacrificed her chance to leave to teach kids to read and write because Jesper told them to go to school. So they have obvious reasons to be mad outside of just, oh, you didn't tell us the truth. And this is where Jesper finally proves who he is. When the toys are threatened, Jesper doesn't hesitate to go back. He risks his life to protect them, not because he expects forgiveness, not because he's trying to win anyone back, but because the toys represent something bigger than him now. This is a film where goodness doesn't come from purity or moral superiority, it comes from flawed people making small choices that ripple outwards. Jesper doesn't start out as a hero, Klaus doesn't start out as a saint. Even the town doesn't change because it wants to, it changes because kindness becomes normal. That's what makes Klaus so special. Jesper's journey isn't about creating Santa, it's about becoming someone worth staying for. He begins the story obsessed with escape, with and reshape the world. And maybe that's why Klaus feels timeless. Not because it explains Santa Claus, but because it reminds us why stories like his exist in the first place.